What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the stream. It's good to see you all. We're going to wait a little bit as people come on in. So I'm excited to finally do this. I took some time off from streaming. It's probably the one thing I really enjoy, which is live streaming, because I get to connect directly with the audience. A lot of you are marketers and have been asking me for more marketing content, since a lot of it was mainly sales focused the first year or so of my business. And so I'm joined by one of my good friends, partners, somebody who I've used over the years when I was in MedTech companies. And when I started my business, I told him, I was like, I don't want an agency. And he said, no, you're going to end up with an agency. And here I am. I have an agency now as well. So Brett Davis, founder of Mighty Orbit, man. Welcome, man. Thanks for doing this.
Excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited too, man. There's a lot for us to cover. And yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff. So let me, we'll get things squared away. Let's see. Oh, we already got some comments. I haven't even, this is a good audience. I haven't even put up the banner yet of to comment what city you're joining from. But let's see who we got here. We got Vendela Martin. What's going on? Hey, Vendela. And then we got Emil Mamery. Great to see you. Thank you for doing this. Hey, thanks for joining, Emil. We appreciate it. Jacqueline, good to see you, Jacqueline. Brianna Hunt, that's a name that I'm very familiar with. Brianna and I met many years ago when she was over at Never. I think she's still there. Brianna, great to see you. Samara, thank you so much for joining us. So you know how this show goes. Before we kind of get started, we kind of like to warm things up. So if you're enjoying this, broadcast, you want to show some love, smash that emoji button. But let's get some comments going. What city are you joining in from? And maybe we'll start with you, Ored. What city are you joining in from?
I am joining in from the beautiful Orlando, Florida.
Beautiful Orlando, Florida. That's where you and I met. So very few people know this, but he's very modest about this. But the tech scene in Orlando is really in part due to thanks of Oret's great work. Oret founded the Orlando Tech Association and really made Orlando, sort of launched from that point. That's what made me fall in love with Orlando when I was there. And I'm joining from the other side of the country, here in the West Coast in California, outside of San Diego. Hey, Mbasa. So Mbasa's joining us from South Africa. Mbasa's a great part of my team. Very grateful to have her. We got Eric Selvik joining from Menlo Park, California. I love Menlo Park, by the way. Emil coming from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, not California. Jacqueline from Miami, Brianna Hunt from Paso Robles. So perfect. And we'll give it a few more minutes before we get started, just because I know people are finishing up meetings, always top of the hour. Hey, Eric coming in based in Atlanta, currently in Northwest Ohio. All right. Very nice. All right. Well, hey, we got a good amount of people. All right. Fantastic. Rashid coming in from Vista, California. The great and powerful Guida Loveris joining us. I know we're Guida. Guida's in Arizona. Good to see you. Again, in Boston from Cape Town, South Africa. Rick Garcia from St. Augustine, Florida. Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining. So I think with that, let me queue up a few things and we will get started. You get rid of this banner, though. And by the way, for those of you who are interested, we are going to be doing a weekly MedTech marketing Zoom call. And so you guys will all receive an email about that. This is a free call. Oret and I decided this is a great way for us to communicate directly with clients, but also people who are, trying to get better at marketing, whether they're a client or not. So we're going to do that on a weekly basis. We're still working through the logistics, but if you're interested, comment MedTech. We'll be sure to message you afterwards. But first, let me pull something up, because many of you are still, probably have seen me and Oret online, but we don't want to make any assumptions. So we want to kind of give you a background and sort of a reason why you should listen to us. Okay. So I'll go first. Let's see here. Perfect. All right. You can see this. You can see the screen, right?
You are live.
Perfect. All right. Well, a little bit of background on me. I'm a former medical student, and I started on my medical device career as a sales rep for a robotics company, robotic spine company. That's it right down there. It's the Missouri Robotics System. I was the first head of growth marketing in MedTech. And actually, this is where Oret and I first started working together, because right around that time, he launched his agency. And, he was the first person and actually he's the only agency that I've really worked with in the industry, just because they do great work. Along that time, I also launched a fashion product just to learn about how do you use Facebook and Instagram ads to essentially sell. And I wanted to bring that into the B2B world. I spent the last decade in healthcare capital equipment and SaaS. So robotics, AI, fintech, essentially anything that's really expensive and doesn't have a new market. And so that's kind of my past. Many of you know me now for my marketing and sales agency, Khatib & Co., where we help companies essentially raise awareness with investors and drive sales pipeline using AI and social media. And of course, the State of MedTech podcast, the industry's #1 podcast. I never get tired of saying that. We worked very hard to get to that. All right, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So Oret Davis, it's my name here. So I'm 3 times head of marketing. I've spent the last 10 plus years building out small, really highly efficient go-to-market teams. So everything from the strategy, execution, and all the way from bootstrap, funding, exit. I've done the full gamut of all for early stage, high growth startup companies. Now, for the last 5 years or so, I've been running Mighty Orbit as the commander of growth. That's kind of the fancy title I gave myself, but really dedicated towards building out full funnel marketing programs for B2B health and tech companies. So really focus on driving sales, driving pipeline, driving revenue growth through a full funnel approach. So everything from ads down directly towards revenue.
Beautiful. So let's start with the first item here, and let me stop sharing that for a second, and maybe we can kind of open it up with just thought leadership strategies. So I'll start by saying this is one area of MedTech that we all know about, which is how do you develop a KOL strategy? Okay, the old way, was you essentially go to a conference, you look at who's on podium and who's publishing the most papers, and you go after them. The problem with that strategy is that that's somebody that is likely already bought and paid for, and even if they're not, they're getting approached by so many different companies, so many different opportunities, and they may not be the right person to be your KOL, especially if you're launching a new product or you're an early stage startup. The main reason why is that some KOLs want a product that works end to end perfectly, and they use it, maybe write a paper, and that's it. For many of you, you want a KOL who, in my opinion, is going to be a DOL, otherwise known as a digital opinion leader. And that's going to be somebody who is interested in starting to engage with your company earlier on, work with the product team, give feedback, but more importantly, leverage social media to post customer success stories and sort of amplify what they're doing with your company and attract more KOLs/DOLs just like them, right? So with that being said, Oret and I both have a couple of campaigns you want to go through, and I'm going to put Oret here on the spot and ask him. He gets to choose. Oret, do you want to go with your example first? Or you want me to kick off? Your choice.
I don't mind going first on this. And one thing I'll chime in here and I'll say is the thought leadership doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It can actually be very, very simple in terms of execution. And the problem or the challenge that we see a lot of companies run into is they overthink this. They take months to kind of plan and execute something that could be done literally the next time you go to a conference. You can execute a thought leadership strategy. And one of the examples I'll show, I've got 2, but I'll start off first here with a company called Next Health. And what they do, they basically do appointment scheduling for physicians for practices. But I found a really good example from them recently from an ad that I got hit with of them doing a thought leadership piece. And it's basically them interviewing a customer at a conference.
Perfect.
Right? The simplest thing ever, right? And I'm sure.
Are you sharing your screen yet?
I will share my screen right now.
Okay. This is our first time, people, so we have to always make sure we got these technical hiccups taken care of.
I've pulled a couple of their ads, but it's this one here in particular in the middle that is the thought leadership type strategy that I want to highlight here. And it's really them, like I said, interviewing a customer. They're just talking about their experience of using the product, the pain points that they have, how their team had issues with scheduling and appointment booking and cancellations, and how they become such a fan over the time of using it. But the thing that I love about this and the simplicity of it is that they're literally at their conference booth. at a conference interviewing their customer, and that's it, right? And it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be overly done. But for any company that's here, I'm sure all of you are going to conferences. I'm sure you have customers. You're meeting your customers there. This should be used as an opportunity, as a chance to get these opinion pieces, to get these customers' testimonials, and just build out assets like this, right? Low friction, low touch points, but just get them out there. So this is a really good example that I found that I've become a really big fan of what Next Health has done. And I haven't seen many MedTech, many health tech companies do this kind of approach, and more should.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I think the other thing is that something to point out is that a lot of MedTech companies overcomplicate how this should be. And, when I say that, and I'll get to my example in a moment, is we got used to this idea of an overproduced video. And the reason for that, this is the sort of pre-social media days, because if you're going to produce a video, people are going to see it one time, and usually it's at a conference or something. And so you want it to look really good. And that's totally understandable. But now with the half-life of content online, you don't have enough money to do that. Like even the most powerful brands on planet Earth, Nike, Coca-Cola, et cetera, like, yeah, they have some overproduced videos, but they have a lot of user-generated content because, it gets better engagement because it doesn't look like it's paid and overproduced, and you can just create it at volume. And, the video that Oret just showed, I could put together a video like that. I'm not a video editor. I can do a video like that in my phone, just using CapCut and a couple of social media, or social media ads, a couple of video editing apps, and I think the other thing is you have to keep in mind, some people don't like this new way of like cutting different takes and sort of all these different animations. There's a time and a place for those things. I think for your long form, like thought leadership and product information videos, they can be a little bit longer. They don't have to have those animations. But when you're trying to get attention and get people to lean in, you have to use these things to get them engaged and get them to actually watch that full video, right? It's not that people's attention spans are shorter. This is the one thing I want to push back on for a lot of marketers. Everybody says like, oh, everybody's attention span is shorter these days. That's not true. The human brain didn't change in the last 10 years. But what has happened is that the competition for attention is greater. Every single person watching this stream, I guarantee you, if Oret and I polled you, there's at least one Netflix show that you sat down and watched for 8 hours in a row on a Saturday, right? And so I guess my point is that you have to find better ways to get people engaged and deliver your message. So that being said, and before I show Mike's example, Oret, feel free to comment. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. There's a fight right now for everyone's attention. And I think the big thing for companies should be really focused on is like, how do you hook that attention? So how do you get folks within the first 3-5 seconds of your video, of your messaging, to like get them really drawn in? And, you talked a little bit about the kind of overproduced, like there's been a backlash of overly produced content. And, I'm a big fan of looking towards other industries, what other influencers, what other marketers are doing, and how they are reacting to shifts in the market. And if you look at someone like, Alex Hormozi, who's become this big synonymous brand with business and with marketing and with sales, he's actually made a shift back towards like less produced video assets, right? Still has some produced stuff on the short form, but on the longer form stuff, it's much more simpler content that's being done. And so, my advice recommendation there is look to other markets, kind of see where trends are going. But the biggest thing overall is to test, right? Like what might be out of fashion or for in the B2B sense or the SaaS world, a lot of times MedTech, Healthtech is 5 years behind everyone else. So it still might be totally relevant. So it's worth testing, launching quick, underproduced, testing something that's really high scale put together, but don't delay. So those are quick thoughts there.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree with that.
So what's your example that you have?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. 1 second. Okay. Here we go.
I think after yours, I have one more example as well too from another company that we can dive into.
Perfect. So the example that I have, it was a client that I worked with, and of course, group that's just, in my opinion, just done a great job with their marketing, because they think about it the right way, which that is Moon Surgical. And so every company has somebody like a Henry Merkley. Dr. Merkley is an early adopter with the Moon system. And so the idea is that when you talk to Dr. Merkley in person at these conferences, he had, he always talked about these areas that he liked the product, right? But those are conversations that are usually, they live and die in that moment. So the idea is, how do we capture that and scale it? So we worked with Dr. Merkley, and asked him, if he can put together a post, and put together this nice long form post on his personal LinkedIn, by the way. Okay. And of course, you always want to make sure that you utilize a good hashtag group. All the research that I've found, and the agencies who actually do research on this, have found that, somewhere between 3 to 9 hashtags is your sweet spot. You want to do some research to figure out like some large hashtag groups and smaller ones that would work. That's probably a topic we can cover another day. And then more importantly, what is a, attention grabbing image, right? And of course, what you don't see is a picture of Dr. Merkley, standing next to the robot and smiling. What you want to see is something in action, and more importantly, focusing on the subject, which is Dr. Merkley, not the technology itself, right? And so with a little bit of colorization, everything, we have a nice photo. So when this was posted originally, I think this got up to like 30 likes. Okay. Now the key is, how do you amplify this? And as a company, you don't need to necessarily go through legal for this, right? Because there's no law against, hey, we're going to drive more traffic and awareness to this ad, whether it's organic through your sales force resharing it or you're paying for it. So in this case, what we did is we took a screenshot of this post. Okay. Now let me back up there for a second. LinkedIn has what's called thought leadership ads, and you can essentially highlight an employee's post and boost it. Well, the problem is, if it's a surgeon, they're not an employee of your company. So what do? Well, what you do is you take a screenshot of the post, okay, just like this, and this is essentially what that looks like. Okay, so you'll see that it's promoted by Moon Surgical, but essentially just shows this post, and it's only a screenshot. So when we boosted this to other surgeons, they're scrolling their feed and they'll see this. Obviously, they're going to click see more. So when they try and click see more, they're clicking on an image, and what that does is it leads to not a Moon Surgical landing page or anything. It just takes traffic directly to Dr. Merkley's post. And I know what some marketers might say is like, oh, well, Omar, you're losing the opportunity to convert a lead. That's not the purpose of this. The idea is, how do you take thought leadership content and amplify it so that more people see it, so that when you decide to drive traffic to a landing page to convert, it actually works, right? You can't do everything all at once. Just like we tell sales reps, hey, when you meet a doctor at the scrub sink or in the physician's office, that's not the time to just, pitch everything and get, you want to develop a relationship with them before you start trying to get them to use your product. Same thing here. And so when you do this, the thing that I recommend, and let me see if I can come, is that take a screenshot, create your ad. I always recommend to start off with just going with general brand awareness on the LinkedIn objective campaign selector, right? And this is just going to put it in front of as many people as possible. But of course, make sure that you select for the titles that you want. So in this case, like let's say it's spine surgeons or whatever, select all those titles. Also use exclusionary criteria. So one thing I like to do is I go and exclude certain industries. So there's surgeons who've decided to go into real estate, for example. I don't want them to see this ad because I'm wasting money. So in my exclusionary criteria, I exclude every other industry except for 3. And these are very important for you to know. Or actually, it's 4 now. Hospitals and healthcare, hospitals, medical practice, and the one that people often miss is higher education, because a lot of physicians in academia don't select hospitals and healthcare. They put higher education. Okay. Now, once you're doing that, what's the benefit of sending traffic here? Well, if you send people to a landing page, you're wanting them to convert right away. That's a higher friction activity, versus liking a post is pretty low friction, right? And so what we do is we monitor this, and then when you go in here, you can see, there's a physician there, There's another physician. So now you're seeing, physicians who have engaged with this content for the very first time. And that's sort of an indirect way of signaling, hey, like this might be somebody either worth us following up with or engaging with their content somehow. All right. So it gives you, a much better indication as to who to go after. The last thing I want to share just real quick, and I'm going to pass it over to Orat, is, on LinkedIn, just like every other ad platform, you can see everybody's ads. Okay. So here's intuitive. If you go to somebody's LinkedIn homepage, you just click over to posts. And here on the left-hand side, you see this thing that says view ad library. And you can see every single ad they've run, which is beneficial for a startup because you can also get an idea of like, from a regulatory legal standpoint, what can you pass through? Now, the last thing I'm going to mention is that everybody's going to see Intuitive's page here, and they're going to say, oh, look at how beautifully designed these things are. Well, here's the thing. Intuitive is a $150 billion market cap company that's been around for 20 years and spent billions of dollars, designing and educating a marketing category. You are not Intuitive. It's like your page, and Orat and I do this all the time. We look at MedTech startups and we look and we see, oh, they're trying to look like Johnson & Johnson. You're not J&J, you're not Intuitive. And even a company like Intuitive would benefit from a little bit more less polished user-generated content. So let me stop there and hop over. And actually, we have a question that came up real quick. Let me pull it up. This user, though, is, let me see. This user's, I guess they're private. Let me see if I can see on the regular feed. Oh, this is Sherry. So Sherry Van Oss. Sherry is a great friend. Sherry, thanks for coming. Sherry says, what is a good target cost amount to do one of these ads? So in my personal opinion, and Orat, I want to hear from you as well. I think for like one thought leadership one, somewhere between $500 and $1,000. And what I would say is do it so that it's done within a month. Because if you put $500 to $1,000 as your lifetime budget and you just let it run in, ad infinitum, LinkedIn will drain that money right away. And you want to make sure that your dollars are spent on a regular basis to a certain extent. You don't want to just do it all at once. Time in marketing is your friend. Okay. All right. What are your thoughts? I mean, my thing is 500 to 1,000. Would you agree?
I'll back up a little bit. I think it really depends on your overall cost per impression. So really depending on how dialed in your target audience is, how big that is as a segment on LinkedIn will determine kind of what an appropriate budget should be. Right. So it's kind of a little bit of a backtrack. I think, yes, as a good testing measure, I think that $500 to $1,000 range is probably kind of in the good sweet spot over the course of, whatever that time period may be. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're getting enough touch points, enough impressions to actually make something like this worthwhile. And, if you have incredibly high CPM, I don't know, you're in the $200 plus range or even higher, that gets eaten up very quickly, right? And then you end up with only, say, 1,000 people, 2,000 people seeing that campaign. So depending on your click-through rates and all that stuff, it really has some downstream impact. So it's really understanding those core metrics first, and then understanding, hey, this should be a $500 test. This should be $1,000. This should actually be a $3,000 experiment that we should be running. So that's kind of my stance on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think knowing your CPM is important. And by the way, I'm glad you brought up that point, is that with marketers, I feel that they do one of two things. Either they put too much weight on impressions, and they do this in a board meeting, like, oh, look, we got like millions of impressions. They can't translate that to results, or they don't put any emphasis on impressions. Impressions exist for a reason. You just have to think within the context of your goal, how do impressions add to the actual strategy, right? And I'll give you a great example tactically. Outside of ads, something that I count as an impression are emails. So once you determine, let's say emails being delivered to a surgeon, right? And let's say that surgeon opens the email, there's 30 emails that have been sent. They opened one or two. And so you might say, oh, that was a waste. I don't think so, because your email is still landing in their inbox. And there's a possibility, if they opened one email, that they're seeing those other emails, and maybe the subject line wasn't strong enough. Maybe there wasn't enough incentive to open it. But either your salesperson's name or your company's name or whatever is still popping up, and over that period of time is having some kind of an impression. That's one thing we have to keep in mind, is that a lot of sales and persuasion has to do with attention and attention over a period of time. Or jump in, man.
Yeah, I'll chime in on the impression item there. The one thing I will say about specifically LinkedIn as a platform is, and then paid advertising a whole, but really with LinkedIn, is that you basically can guarantee exposure to everyone in your target audience over a period of time. Right. So that's where the impression metric really has some weight, is like you can ensure that XYZ hospital system, XYZ physician, like they have seen your brand, they've seen your logo, they've seen your overall message and your narrative at some point in that time period, right? So that's kind of where, when we think about impressions, it's like, it goes back to your goal. But one of those goals, depending on where you are, is that brand awareness piece of getting in front of your target market, creating those touch points, building up that story, that awareness to obviously take someone through that overall customer and user journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I actually did have a couple other things to add on the thought leadership ads piece. Is one, LinkedIn did actually, this is a recent change, by the way, is LinkedIn actually does now allow you to do thought leadership ads with any user. It doesn't have to be a part of your company or employee. So you can actually do this with anyone.
Oh, when did they roll that out?
About a month or two ago. So it's a fairly recent change.
Shame on me then.
Yeah, it's all good. That's why we're here to share best tips.
That's the point of us doing this weekly thing, man. Yeah, because there's a lot of these updates happen. So
they happen all the time. So that's a really neat, awesome update that's happened recently. And so everyone here kind of take that into mind. The other point that I'll make in terms of how to think about using the thought leadership ads, because leadership is going to have some questions like, hey, this is going to people that are not going back to our website, not going to our assets. It's some third party. Another way to think about this is people that you can get, how to say this? You can get more cost-effective or cheaper engagements through some of these thought leadership ads, through some of the different campaign objective types, right? But also where this strategy becomes really, really beneficial and useful is through retargeting. So anyone that has engaged with a thought leadership ad, we can now retarget them with additional assets, additional content, additional marketing that's more, middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, depending on the stage. So that's where kind of thought leadership as a whole kind of plays into this broader strategy. It's not just, hey, this cheap impression that we're going to get from this key opinion leader. It's like, now we have engagement. We have people that have liked to engage with this post. We can now remarket to them and do stronger call to action, book a demo, get the white paper, whatever it may be. So that's kind of the 1-2 punch of how to really effectively think about using some of the thought leadership ads, and how we've seen folks and ourselves have used it very successfully as well too, is through that approach.
Nice, fantastic. Yeah. You want to jump on in? You had another example you wanted to share.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on thought leadership, so I'll make this one super quick, and then we can dive into the next topic here. And the other example I'll show from a company that I think has kind of become, it's like the sexy company now that everyone talks about, is Butterfly Networks. And I have a couple of examples here, because we, like Omar said, we pull from the ads library so we can see what ads everyone's running here. But they are running 4 to 5 what we consider to be more of these user generated videos. So they have one here with an actual influencer. And so this person is really just sharing kind of the benefits of the old tech versus the new IQ3, and kind of comparing how it's the form factor. This video here is about 4 or 5 different quick interviews of folks talking about the product itself. This one here is a physician, ER physician, going through the kind of how, the before and after of having to wheel around this big cart versus now has this device they can pull in the pocket. And then that last one here is kind of the VP really just kind of talking about a specific use case around ultrasounds with kids. Right. So 4 really quick examples, because I don't want to sit here. We'll make some of these assets available after the show here, of how other companies are using some of this more user generated video, these less produced kind of quick videos in different fashions to highlight their product and kind of get messaging out there. And drive revenue, drive sales.
Perfect. By the way, I think this is a good test, because we already have, like, I don't know, I'm writing down names, but a lot of people who've commented MedTech because they want to join that weekly Zoom call. So it looks like we have to do that now.
Hey.
This is all a test. It started last week, where it's like, let's just get on live. We got on live. It went really well. And now we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of practicing what I preach. So we try and tell clients, like, do things fast and get early positive signals. And that should help influence if you should do things more versus, you and I both talked to a company that's literally taking them 6 months to do a single webinar because of the round robin of approvals of the title, of the headline, of the image, topic, what technical tools we're going to use.
Yeah.
It took them 6 months, and I think we spun, we're a small agency, but the principles still apply. We had this idea and we spun it up in 3 days. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of process that companies should take, to kind of move fast and break things. Like that is an okay philosophy to take. Doesn't need to be perfect because you'll figure things out as you go along.
And just like shameless pitch here, but like this is part of the reason why, like one of the reasons why I did this is that having been a head of marketing in various MedTech companies, I know how difficult it is because you don't always have like for me, I always worked with like a legal and regulatory department that always trying to always make it work, right? But some of you have legal and regulatory departments that just make your life more difficult. And so if you have that kind of situation, State of MedTech, come to us. We'll do a webinar on our channel, which means that we take care of the creative and everything. We have your KOL on, and we take care of all this distribution. You guys just have to pay for it. But it's one less thing you have to worry about because technically it's unbranded, which means legal and regulatory don't have to deal with it, with the exception of like, let's say the slides or talk tracks that your KOLs are going to have, which have already been approved. So you just have to get creative about this. Again, jump in on these weekly live Zooms, and we're now going to show you all kinds of tricks that we learned and picked up over the years. Next one, let's talk about this. This is a very important one for me. Yeah. Reducing the friction in the physician's buying process. Or why don't you kick us off on that one?
Yeah, so this is a good one, and it's not really just physicians. It's anyone that's in the the buying decision making process, regardless if you're selling to hospitals or private practices or wherever it may be. And I'm a big fan of reducing the friction in the buying process. And to me, what that means is making it easy, making it accessible, allowing prospects to choose how they want to engage with your company and your brand, right? And so that can be as everything from, some people don't want to speak to sales, so make the demo video of your product accessible, right? However you want to do that, make the video accessible. It could be on the back end process. We're giving folks the option, hey, I want to watch the demo. I actually do want to speak to sales, like make that an option as well too. Provide an option for people to book directly on the calendar of your sales team. The caveat there is, have some qualifying questions and some qualifying process before you expose the calendar. But there's plenty of ways to do that with HubSpot, with Calendly, with Chili Piper, and all these other tools. But make it easy for them to make the direct booking. And then another one that I'm a big fan of is, as your sales team is having meetings, like write down the most common questions, the most common objections, and find ways to present that ahead of time, right? So whether that's an FAQ on the landing page, an FAQ on or before the schedule a demo, if someone's already submitted a form, like make that information accessible. Obviously there's always, leadership always has some caveats like, oh, we don't want to show pricing, we don't want to show X, Y, and Z. That's fine, work through those, but try and find ways if you're getting common questions around reimbursements or whatever it may be, like find ways to address those, or at least give some insights. That way, prospects come in more educated. You can have deeper conversations in a sales meeting that are just the surface level discovery qualification type questions, right? And you can do a lot of front-loaded work and effort can get out of the way if you reduce the friction in the buying process. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, my thoughts on this is that you have to go back to asking yourself, like, what's the goal, right? The goal is going to be obviously like more revenue. So how do you get to more revenue? You close more deals. How do you get to more deals? You have to have more meetings, right? It's a very simple math equation. And to get to that point of like, okay, if that's our goal, these are the objectives, right? Then you have to figure out like, okay, what's the activity that we're going to do? Because at the end of the day, no matter what you're selling, no matter who you are, right? The only thing you can control really is that the daily and weekly activity. If the daily and weekly activity is in order for a potential buyer hospital admin, surgeon, physician, whatever, for them to learn about our product is that our sales rep has to coordinate with them and their assistant or whoever a calendar invite for them to get on for an hour or even 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And even if it does happen, you have to think about it. Like, let's say you have a really good conversion rate on that. Well, what's the time added to the pipeline velocity, right? So this is why some deals, in reality, if you pull certain levers, they can be potentially done in 3 to 4 months instead of 6 to 9 months, right?
Yep.
And there's a compounding effect to this. So, for example, I'm gonna pull up a framework real quick that I think most MedTech companies may not be ready to do this by themselves. But again, like, this is why we're doing these kind of live streams. The idea is, how do we do this at scale so that the content is distributed? We achieve the goal of like educating this person. And more importantly, what a salesperson will never tell you, because for a salesperson, more activity is good. Because if you're not closing deals, like, hey, I'm really busy and getting meetings, right? And so what they won't tell you is the number of people who get on a call and within the first 5 minutes, you realize like, oh, this is the wrong person, or they're not interested or something, but you still try and sell. You need to eliminate that, right? So something that I like to share, and I'll focus on one area, but this is sort of a D2C or direct to consumer approach to scaling medical sales. Okay. So if we look at this, let me move this over here, zoom in a little bit.
And at the end of the day, I'll chime in. End of the day here, you're the quicker you can get to know is like the best thing ever for a lot of sales teams.
Exactly.
Because the maybe is the worst thing, right? You have a deal that stays stagnant for 90 plus days, 120 plus days. And there's just no movement because there's no quick no, versus if there's a no, the sales team can stop following up, or put them in a separate bucket reserved for lower touch point activities or lower time activities.
100%.
But when they're in this maybe bucket,
yeah, it's no man. You don't want to be there. Yeah. You don't want to be there. So let's just say you have a simple like lead gen form. Our industry loves lead gen. And again, I recommend going across all these different channels, but let's just say LinkedIn. Fill out something, and when they fill something out, again, there's a time and place to add friction, meaning you can ask for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different fields, their practice name, their NPI number, all these things. But you only do that when you're getting so much traffic and so many leads that like, hey, we don't have enough people to service these, right? None of you have that problem. If you have that problem, please like come talk to me in Ored. We'll pay you to see what you're doing to get that kind of result. But then after they submit, again, first name, last name, email. And part of the reason why I like LinkedIn is that you can automate it so that it's automatic lead form fill. So you can get their job title. Send them immediately to a mini webinar with a scheduler page. All right. A mini webinar is something that's like less than 5 minutes long. Okay. Less than 5 minutes. They can watch it easily. And right below it, there's a large button to schedule time. So that way, if there's a lot of velocity in that prospect's mind, they'll book the time. And if they don't, then afterwards, you have a variety of ways to follow up with them, depending on what you get. You can follow up via text, via messenger, or directly call them. Or again, you can use, Facebook Messenger, but also there's all these other social media channels that you can use. And that's a topic I'm going to get to a little bit later. But the whole idea here is, how do you make it easy to accomplish the goal? And the goal is we want to take this demo and put it in front of the prospect. And you're either going to say, yeah, I kind of want to learn more, or no. That should not be done through your sales team, because with the exception of the first 5 minutes when the sales member is like chumming it up with the doctor and everything, it's the same presentation. So we want to get these videos out, and your sales team member can also learn how to create video sales letters. So customizing that little pitch, but sending that instead. So when I focus on this in past companies, I was able to book more meetings than sales teams. Why? It's because I did this at scale, and more importantly, instead of me saying, "Hey doc, let's find an hour or 30 minutes," it's like, "Hey, here's a video, watch it, tell me when I can call you, and we'll talk for 5 or 10 minutes." the velocity that goes from a 3 to 4 week ordeal to something that gets done within 3 or 4 days. And then you decide, oh, this is the right person. Then I can spend all this time following up.
Yeah, I love the I'll use the video sales letter instead of the mini webinar. So like the video sales letter approach, the custom Loom video approach, I think is something that's very underutilized, because it makes this process a lot more seamless, makes it a little bit more async, and you get a human interaction. Right? I get to see your face. I get to interact with you through this video before I hop on the sales call, before I respond to that email, whatever it may be. So we're big fans of those custom Loom videos for that exact process. Right. And it's something I haven't seen many sales teams truly. I see it a bunch when we work with SaaS companies, see it a bunch when we work with tech companies. I rarely see it when we work with health tech companies or MedTech companies.
And
I rarely see it.
Yeah. And I got we got some questions I'm going to pull up, but real quick, just because, people have done it. I don't want to say done it to me, but there have been people who very clearly reference some work that I've done and everything, but they don't reference me. And I'm like, I want to give a shout out to somebody, he's a good friend of mine. I've been using video sales letters for a long, long time, but there's one guy in our industry who's kind of been like the messenger behind just driving this. And he's been talking about it for years. I just want to give him a little shout out real quick. And that's Matthew Ray Scott. So he's focused so much talking about using video sales letter. His preferred platform is Vidyard. But I just want to give a shout out to him because he's posted the data behind this and how much more effective it is. So I want to give a little shout out to him, just show some love. All right, let's see these comments. We got some comments here. All right. So Eric says, this is a very important point. The opportunity cost of the lost time in getting to a no is a killer. Yes, that's 100%. The key Absolutely. Is we want to disqualify people. And let me bring up Brianna. Brianna brought up a point. I want to bring up a graphic real quick. Brianna says, Eric, I agree. From the assessment to getting someone on the phone should be as short as possible, less than 24 hours. It's vital that the person calling them back is well educated on the product to provide confidence. 100%. 100%.
And I'll chime in on this. Like,
chime in real quick while I pull something.
Yeah,
out.
While you pull it up. So it's something I've worked with a couple of companies. Is like when we work as a marketing team and we work with a sales team, we have a service level agreement with our sales teams. We provide you a lead and they're hot. Like, you have to respond back within 24 hours. And there should be no reason why I, as a marketer, can look up a lead within 5 minutes and the sales team can't do the equivalent. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like, to me, that's like a non-starter with like the best marketing sales team that have like really true alignment that just absolutely crush it. Like, that response rate is sometimes within hours, within minutes, actually, and not a day cycle. To a lead comes in, it's responded to, like the videos are sent off. Some folks automate this, which is fine. Some do it manual, but there's a streamlined process of rapid communication. And I've seen some really great companies. Yeah, I love the formal SLA. Yeah. Yeah. And hi to everyone's sales bonus if they don't respond back in 24 hours, but that's besides the point.
And just I gotta brag a little bit just because I know. So there's this one book called Predictable Revenue, great book, but this pretty much gave birth to the whole SDR, BDR world. And especially this concept that like, you have to have somebody respond right away. You don't always have to do that, but Oret's point is still true, which is like, it needs to be done in an efficient time frame within at least 24 hours at the very least. If you can do it right away, it's good. Yeah, timely.
It's timely. Like, that's the word. Timely.
How many times have you filled something out online and was hoping somebody from that company like reached out to you that hour? Usually, like that never happens, especially if you're busy. You want them to reach out within like a day or two, right? But the point is like it has to be triage. And for the marketers who are listening, very important that you understand to have what's called an SLA. SLA, or a service level agreement, which is you need to have a contract between your department and the sales department to decide like, hey, this is what we decide is what's going to make us successful. This is what we have to deliver. This is what you guys have to deliver. Because then at the end of the quarter, if you don't hit a KPI, you can objectively go back and say, okay, like where in the process do we mess up? It's like, okay, on the SLA side, the reps can't immediately respond because some of these leads are coming during hours that they're in surgery or whatever. So that way you have an objective and productive conversation versus at the end of the quarter, you guys are usually at each other's throats. Now, and the last thing I wanted to say, again, to Brianna's point about, reaching out and everything. If you don't know this graphic, I'm going to give you a hard time, but you should know it. You should buy the book and understand this inside and out as a marketer. This is like my first question to most marketers that I've hired in the past, which is, do you know about crossing the chasm, right? And the more important thing is you need to study this, because the people who are over here, okay, let me go over here. The people over here on the innovator side, like these people are very different from like the early adopters. And so understanding their psychology, their messaging, everything is super important, because you might get a lead that comes in who's like, nah, not interested. You have to also evaluate that lead, go do some research and say, you know what? The reason why they're not converting now is not because they don't believe in our product. It's because they're sitting at a later point in the adoption curve. They probably need to see that this peer is using it, that peer, right? And so now you have a lot more of a sophisticated approach to commercialization, because the other idea is that in everybody's CRM are old leads that could probably convert. They just sit at a certain point in the adoption curve, and you have to service them and sell them a different way.
Yeah, I'll chime in here because we're talking about the adoption curve, and there's been a couple of studies that have talked about like the percentage of in any given market, any given TAM or kind of anything like that, there's a certain percent of your market that is in an active buying mode. Like they are in market, ready to buy. That number is generally between 3 to 5%, right? Mm-hmm. That means the other 95 to 97% of people, they're in your ICP, but they are not in an active buying mode yet, right? The keyword there is yet. And so that's where kind of a lot of marketers, a lot of companies, a lot of teams, they focus on that 5%, but everyone is focusing on the same 5%. That 5% is shrinking, so it ends up really being a 1% of your market that is in this phase, right? And that's where everyone kind of markets to. That supply runs out very quickly. And then you're left with this massive opportunity, the other side of that curve, right? Where people don't spend enough time marketing towards building up the awareness, the education that we tend to be very big proponents of, because it captures that broader market. And when they are in the buying mode, right, you're the first company they think of. There's some stats out there as well too that like 78 to 80% of B2B buyers have already shortlisted 3 vendors before they sign up for a demo. Right, so huge opportunity there that's oftentimes missed because people are so focused on the now and like the short term, the quick wins, and they miss out on the broader marketing opportunities.
Completely agree. Yeah. I completely agree. I know we went a little bit long on some of these topics, but let's keep it rolling. Let's see if we can get through most of the topics. That'd be great. But I'm gonna monitor when we have a big drop off in the attendance. Maybe we'll wrap it up. But so far it's going on strong.
That's when we'll drop the real gems.
There we go. Yeah, for people to say the full yeah, there we go. All right. All right. I'm gonna let you pick full funnel marketing or what is ABM. It's like double jeopardy. Which one do you want?
Yeah, I'm actually down a little bit more for the full funnel because we're kind of on that topic, now, and I think this kind of relates to the other topic I was going to talk to a little bit about remarketing as well too, because that's something we've seen work out really well. So I'll share my screen again.
Yeah, sure. Do you have a funnel?
I have like a breakdown of like our general buyer's journey and how we tend to think about this.
Even better. Let's do it.
Yeah. So we'll share that. But we've talked about this before. You've heard Omar and I kind of share this. A lot of companies really focus in on this like bottom of the funnel aspect, right? So I'm sharing here. We've got this overall buyer's journey. We've got the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. We've got the 5 stages of awareness: unaware, problem aware, solution, product, most aware. Most companies, they like immediately go for this bottom of funnel type marketing, right? Book a demo, schedule a call. Like our product does this, X, Y, and Z. Like come speak to us today, right? And we've talked about this. Only 3 to 5% of your market is like actively kind of in this, but by the time they're here, they've already done all this research. So you're fighting this uphill battle. Right. And so really when we type to think about full funnel, It's like this full process. You know, in the simplest terms, it's like top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel. But the assets, what you're trying to do, the goals, they change as you drive people through these various stages. And, you know, typically at the top, talking about traffic, awareness, we tend to do things or see things like, you know, how do you solve a pain point, pain-oriented marketing, you know, product service, the old way versus the new way. When you kind of move more middle of the funnel, you know, you're talking a little bit more about the results and real heavy product marketing, case studies. We talked a lot today about kind of this user-generated content and thought leadership. Like these play good in both, but really well in like kind of the middle funnel when someone's already aware of the problem that they're facing, and now they just want more proof and validation. And then the bottom, it's really just driving home, once again, those case studies, the cost of not working with you. Like this is the problem. If you don't buy this robotics device, like, you know, XYZ is going to happen. Or if you do get this new AI tool, you're going to get this benefit, right? So when we look at this, it's kind of thinking about a holistic kind of full funnel approach to marketing, where it's the landing pages go and relate to specific pieces of this puzzle, the ads that you're running, the content you're promoting on organic or on paid relate to these, versus most companies really just stick straight to the bottom, like buy now, when your market isn't actually, very few people in your market are actually ready to do that buy now type action.
No, I completely agree. And, you know, I think the most important thing is we have to get better as an industry about thinking about what's the level of awareness that our market has of not just the product, but the problem, right? I think too often, whether it's marketing, but especially sales, you're trying to sell a solution to a problem that the customer doesn't even know that they have, right? And even when you show them like, oh, here's the problem, and they're like, you know, it's a sign that you need to dig deeper for a, you know, stronger desire, stronger pain point, you know, and the only way this is, right? Yeah, exactly.
Like if you don't know there's a better tool to Excel, you just think Excel is great. Why would I ever use something different than Excel? Meanwhile, you have tools like Airtable and XYZ that have all these great features, but you would never think to use those unless you were educated on the benefits of switching a platform. Otherwise, you continue your life. Excel is the only thing. It's the only tool that's out there.
100%. And I think that the way you get there is through the marketing of like desires and pains of your target market. And more importantly, you have to understand like who's that person today and who are they trying to become? So who that person today is today, it could be that, you know, it's a surgeon who's really good at what they do. They see other surgeons using, let's say, the Da Vinci system. They're not a Da Vinci surgeon, and they're, you know, deep down inside kind of frustrated about that because they don't like using the Da Vinci system. They're not getting any love and everything. And so maybe you come along, Moon Surgical is a great example of like a new option that isn't a direct competitor to that, but it just offers the benefit of robotics, right? You know, in a different setting. And so the key is if you do things the right way, and this is why the thought leadership ads are important, you know, splitting your funnel is important, is because what you hope for is that your product becomes a catalyst to get that persona moving from who they are and where they are today to who they can be and where they want to go tomorrow. And sometimes they're not aware of that until they see your product and then see that future. And then that's when you have like this, you know, every famous company or successful company didn't become what it was because they got like the chair of Harvard or chair of Hopkins. They found some surgeon who ended up becoming activated to the technology and became this diehard fan and opened up the market for them.
I've got something that I know you're going to love this topic. I think the really good companies that do this, they have a very strong opinions, but they have a strategic narrative, right? Like they have I know you're going to like it. So they have a specific worldview that they're sharing, right? That their ideal customers will latch on to. And because of how they're promoting it, how they're talking about it, the constant repetition, like this is the world it should be, as it should be through our eyes. Like everyone should be using robotic assisted surgery. everyone, every physician. Right? That is the worldview. That is the future that we live in. Anything else doesn't exist in our future world. Right? Like that's the kind of narrative that wins. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there for medtech companies to think about what the strategic narrative looks like. Like there's a world where every physician has some type of AI enabled tool, right? How do you promote that story and share it? So like we're getting a lot of comments chimed in here, but I figured you'd get a kick out of the strategic narrative.
Oh,
I know you're big on that.
No, yeah, because I mean, part of that strategic narrative is like you have to have a strong opinion. Like, I'm sorry, some people don't like to hear this, but like, you have to like the foundation of any business, whether you're selling surgical robots, you have a marketing agency, or like I don't know, you're selling like hamburgers. You have to get attention. The only way you get attention is through things that are very novel and that are very they're rooted in like a strong point of view. Otherwise, it's just vanilla, and now that's when you get into the features and benefits game, and you're going to lose, right? Brianna has a really
and Alex as well too has a really good point.
All right, who am I bringing up first, Brianna or Alex?
I saw Alex first, so I'll leave it to you.
I'll bring up Alex, and of course, like we're gonna have to stand. All right, so Alex says it's easy to get lost in the product and the solution it provides. Recently, I had to shift my approach back to highlighting the problem. It encourages better dialogue, learning, understanding, and acceptance of the value prop. 100%, because the reason why is that think about how you solve for things. Like you don't go and just start talking about products. You talk about the problem, and when you talk about the problem, the best thing that you can do as a salesperson is be the expert on that problem, because then you're having a peer-to-peer conversation. The best salespeople who do this, I've always noticed that they very rarely have to ask a KOL or some customer of the company to come in the conversation. They're able to have that conversation one-on-one because they know the problem from so many different perspectives than that one person, right? That's really the point, because again, the problem is what gets attention. Everything you bought in your house didn't start with you just magically thinking about a product. Subconsciously, even there was a problem, you had to solve it. For me, I bought something recently that like it was a little like we use that Swiffer wet jet thing. I have a baby. Oh, yeah. and so now I think about things I never thought about before, including my son's walking around barefoot. And so I thought like, the cleaning solution is probably like, has some chemicals in it and stuff. I was like, I think I want to get like a little attachment to just make my own cleaning solution. So like, I didn't think about that product. I thought about this problem that I was seeing it visibly, and that was spawned by, I don't know, I think when I was at somebody else's house, it came to mind. So the idea is like, how do you use the problem to get somebody's attention? Keep in mind, this is going to be very evolutionary, but like, this brain of ours was not evolved to look for positive things and happiness and everything. It was evolved for survival. And part of survival is literally looking for problems and negativity, because those things can kill us. It's 2024, but like, the problem, my kid walking around and like, I don't know, a tiger attacking me, it's kind of sits in the same part of the brain. We got a couple
more, but I know we're almost at time here, but we're still holding strong with viewership here. So
dude, we're doing great with viewership. We'll keep it going, man. We'll keep it rolling. You want to jump on something real quick, or should I bring up one of these other comments?
Let's bring up another comment.
Let's see. Brianna's got a really good one. It's gonna cover our faces, but whatever. Let's do it. All right. So the comment is, for patients with chronic long-term conditions, the patient knows there's a debilitating problem, but they've been told so many times for limited treatment options that don't work or don't work long-term. It takes considerable amount of education to move them from a Facebook ad to a surgical solution. This is where the bottom of the funnel nurturing becomes so essential, i.e. retargeting, call center, ability to schedule appointments in their local community, etc. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the point here is that you have to use this type of content, one, to get attention and to get the person to a point where they're going to take an action. That's the other thing, is like, okay, like what's the action we want them to take? What's going to happen in that nurture sequence? And then how are we going to help them along to solving that problem? And Brianna's specifically talking about patient marketing there, which is a really tough one.
Yep.
And then One more. This is from Sherry Van Ost. Sherry says, I couldn't agree more. Robotic assisted procedures are growing in so many different specialties in healthcare, but it's a challenge to sometimes define a problem people they don't know they have. That's completely correct. And I would even argue that okay, look, for me, in how I run my company and everything, I don't even get on a call with somebody if I feel that they don't understand the problem that they have, right? Or feel like they even have a problem. Because there's plenty of companies out there that and Orat and I, we riff on them all the time. This is part of the reason why we started this weekly call, where I'm like, man, this company's blowing a lot of money and they're doing a terrible job. But I don't talk to them because just in, you can sometimes just tell based on the way a company positions itself and the people they hire and everything that there's no interest to change. There's an interest to just kind of maintain what's status quo.
Yeah, I'll chime in on this comment, right? Because I think in certain industries, you're going to see a flood of competition, a flood of new entrants to the market. And I think companies really struggle with the differentiation, differentiating themselves from everyone else. And I think that's where, going back to what we were talking about earlier about the strategic narrative, what is their strongly held opinion about their worldview, why this is the way to go, and kind of why they believe, what's their thesis around that. And I think that's what helps to set these companies apart. We've seen dozens of AI is the new hot trend. Every company in the world now has an AI solution. What makes your AI any different than anyone else, right? And same thing, everyone now has some type of robotic assisted something. What makes your robotic assisted XYZ better than anyone else? And I think companies are going to struggle to figure this out. Companies that do this well will win. Those that don't will either go out of business or get consolidated to those that have figured it out. But it's definitely a big challenge.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. All right, let's keep the party going because the viewership's still good. So let's. All right,
I've got another about 10 minutes maybe on this one. So
okay,
I've got to call it.
Oh, okay. You mean you didn't block out your whole day for this? Okay, so I'm gonna let you. You get to pick or at what choose your own adventure here. So we're gonna do what is ABM and MedTech, the multi-channel medical sales approach, or retargeting.
I'm biased towards retargeting and multi-touch.
You got to pick one. You got to pick one of those.
Let's do retargeting. Let's talk about that. Let's get back to tactical for a second. I'm a big fan of tactical things, and so we talked about this a little bit earlier, and in terms of stages of awareness, kind of buyer's journey, and a lot of times that we see companies, like I said, they go directly towards the kind of demo now, buy now, and they miss out on an opportunity to remarket or kind of retarget to their audience, right? Or to prospects. And a big strategy that we've become a fans of is pairing something like a Google search with LinkedIn. And you get the high intent engagement from Google, right? So people are searching specifically for your product. So I'm specifically searching for robotic assisted knee surgery device, right? I'm explicitly searching for that. I'm in market for that solution. So there's really high intent there. We call them money keywords, right? And those people that search for those things, visit your website or landing page, but don't end up converting, you can then retarget them on something like LinkedIn, which is really powerful combo there, because you can get, and Omar talked about this earlier, really precise targeting, and you can get really good exclusions, right? So I want to ensure that this gets remarketed to only to hospital systems that have over 5,000 employees, right? And anyone else won't see these LinkedIn ads at all because I can do that exclusion, or I only want to make sure that only teaching hospitals see this, right? So I only want to target to higher education physicians that are associated with higher education hospitals or colleges and universities, right? So it's a really good valuable retargeting approach process. You can pair the high intent from, like I said, search, pair that with LinkedIn, and you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you can get really good targeting and exclusions, and kind of build out this call it highly leveraged approach to your campaign structure.
I completely agree. And something, again, like it's, there was a time in the world, I'd say like maybe 10, 15 years ago. So like starting around 2010, where as a marketer, you can make a hypothesis around of the 15 to 20 channels that are out there, that like 3 of them, these are going to be, we're going to test 3 to 5 of these. And we want to find our quote traction channel. You run your experiments and you figure it out and you're like, great, we're going to just shove all the money in here. And unfortunately, that does not work anymore, even for like consumer products. And the reason why is that the consumer has changed and evolved. Our buying criteria for a lot of things has become a lot more sophisticated. And so you have to ask more difficult questions and try and understand, how can we, with a limited budget, let's say, leverage the right channels in the right ways, And so, and that also includes like, and there's no AI for this, honestly. This is where, like, I hate to say, like, as a marketer, I feel like too many marketers these days, like, I see heads of marketing hiring like a head of communications, a director of marketing, a director of this and that. And like each one of these people need their own agency, And so I don't feel like anybody does it work anymore. By the way, like, by all means, like, you should have an agency helping you, because, the benefit is that you're working with somebody who's run like multiple experiments and they can, save you the time and headache for figuring it out on your own. But anyway, the point is that you also have to look at your user. So for example, on LinkedIn, if you're trying to, let's say, target private practices, the first, thought is like, okay, we're going to target people and we're going to put, aside from like solo practitioner, owner, et cetera, but like that they're going to have a company of, let's say, 1 to 10 people.
Yep.
The problem sometimes with that is that there are a lot of physicians out there who are, have their own private practice, but they're employed by a hospital as well, right? So let's say they do like private practice work on the weekend, they're employed at the hospital, but on LinkedIn, which is an employment platform, they're listing their main hospital. So there could be all these private practitioners who you're going to miss in your ad targeting because you said to exclude companies over 10,000 employees. Well, they happen to have privileges at like that one hospital, and that's what they're going to list. Yeah, because they want to leverage the fact that like, oh, like I have privileges at Cedars-Sinai or something. They're not going to put their little practice. So you have to always think about that. And again, this is what makes it more sophisticated. The benefit, though, is that because it's this hard, that means that there's more opportunity for the marketers who think a little bit more deeper on this, take a little bit more action, take a little bit more risk, and then you'll enjoy those results. Because I guarantee you, most competitors, the people who are on this podcast, on this, like, between Orette and I, we have personally invited probably close to 1,000 people to this today. I've sent email blasts, I sent outreach messages and everything, and like less than 10% of those people showed up. So the people who are on this, like, you're the right people, and if you take these actions, and of course, like, we got a lot of people who said MedTech, and they're gonna, we're gonna sign you up for that weekly Zoom, which is free. You'll get to benefit from this and like whoop up on your competitors.
So I will add on this about just generally knowing, because you were talking a little bit about platforms and really understanding your target market and your customers and kind of what the intention is on each channel, right? So for example, we found Facebook like as a really good tool to target physicians at smaller practices, right? LinkedIn can be kind of questionable there at smaller practices, right? Because we have seen, for example, LinkedIn, it's a lot of job searchers, right? A lot of residents or people that are kind of about to enter the job market are on LinkedIn. Right? So depending on your product or service, some channels might be really, really good for you and others not so great, because it's a mismatch of the intent on the channel or the target market on the channel. Obviously, if we're trying to target large hospital systems and networks, Facebook, it may not be the best, versus LinkedIn might be great because the CEO, CTOs, the VPs of XYZ, they're on LinkedIn because that's where their peers are. They're on LinkedIn. And so all this to say is you really have to know your channels, really have to know your target market, kind of what the intent or like your target segment for your specific, ICP, how they're engaging on those channels and what they're using those channels for, and help that inform your marketing, your retargeting strategy. Because like I said, we pair Google with LinkedIn, we pair Google with Facebook, we pair Facebook with Google, right? So there's a cross pollination of channels and of tactics, really dependent on your industry, your ICP, kind of who you're going after.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree. Well, look, on that note, we'll wrap up. All right, thanks for doing this. We're, definitely, it was a great success. So we're gonna, considering all the, and I got to go back. We had a lot of people comment MedTech. So those and people,
we've got more questions that we didn't get a chance to go over as well, too, more topics. So we can definitely save a couple of these for the next go around. And if there's a topic or something that you're seeing in the industry or in your company and you want us to talk about it, we would love to have you share as well too. It's kind of my quick ask there as we kind of do more of these.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you everybody for joining. Keep an eye out on your email. We'll send more details about that private weekly Zoom that we're going to be doing. And again, it's more of a, marketing mastermind. We're going to cover topics. We're going to take live Q&A and everything. This is just our way of like being in touch with everybody and helping as many people as we can. So, all right. Any final words?
No, this is fun. Feel free to connect with us and we'll keep the conversation going. This is great. Appreciate
awesome.
This. Appreciate y'all for being here.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, for those who are who joined us, thank you so much for watching. And then if you are joining and watching the replay, totally okay. Common MedTech, we're going to be checking this. So again, if you want to be part of our weekly MedTech marketing Zoom call, and this is open to marketers, commercial people. If you're a salesperson, doesn't matter. We want you to join. Like, CEOs. So
anyone that's responsible for driving revenue in your,
if you're responsible for money, this is the call.
There you go. Marketing, sales doesn't matter.
Exactly. Exactly. Revenue, 100%. Just comment MedTech. We'll send you a direct message. And if anything, check your emails. We'll be sending more information on this. So that being said, we will see you all next time. And, for those who are curious, we're going to publish this broadcast on State of MedTech, Spotify, Apple, so you can enjoy it on your drive home. We will see you all next time.
Have a good one.